As a professional bike mechanic, two things I hear all too often are, why am I getting so many punctures, and I should learn how to fix this myself at some point. More times than not, it's because you didn't find what caused the original puncture. I'll bet at some point you've repaired a puncture and got another one pretty much straight away. Ultimately, you want to be in a position where you never have that deflating feeling ever again. There's a lot of conflicting information on YouTube and the internet about what you should and shouldn't do. I just want to shed a little light on the subject, and that's what this is all about. Being able to work out what caused the puncture in the first place is really important because it means you can stop yourself getting the same puncture again straight away. You've just got to become the bike. G'day viewers, my name's Ashley Malcolm and I'm going to show you how to stop getting recurring punctures. I'm going to do this by showing you how to work out what caused your punctures, how to repair an inner tube properly, and when you're just wasting your time. You'll want to stick around till the end, but I'm going to show you how to get home riding your bike without wrecking your wheels. When all else fails, this information will be invaluable. So clip yourself in and let's jump straight into it. Now the easiest way to work out what's caused your puncture is to take one side of the tyre off, take your inner tube out and leave the tyre on the rim. And then you basically want to pump the tyre up, and if you can't find the hole immediately because it's small, then you just want to pump it up a bit bigger. The inner tube will go quite big before it actually ruptures. So you can pump it up to find the hole. And one thing I like to do is work my hands around the tube and stretch the rubber out as I'm going so I can find the hole if it is really small. Now sometimes you won't have to worry about trying to find the hole, and you probably won't even be able to find the hole when you're out on the road because the hole's so big that the air is coming out faster than it's going in. Now you just want to make sure while you're doing this that you're keeping the inner tube in the same plane as the tyre and the wheel, because when you find the hole, wherever that is, you want to then go back to the wheel or the tyre and work out what's actually caused that puncture. So if the puncture's on the outside of the tube, then that's from something going through the tyre, so a thorn or a bit of glass or a nail or something like that. And you want to go back to the tyre in the same place where that is around the circle and just find what it is that's in there. Now you shouldn't run your fingers inside the tyre if you can help it. You should try and find the object from outside. Sometimes there's something really sharp in there. Obviously it just punctured the tube and it can just cut the tips of your fingers. And that's the last thing you want when you're trying to sort out a puncture while you're out on the road. Now once you've found what it is, if you can't just get it out from the outside, you want to get your tyre lever and just push it out from the inside, and then you should be able to just pick it out. Once you've found what it is and you've got that out, you want to just have a look around the tread all over the tyre and just make sure there's no more bits through it. You can just pick up one thing and get a puncture, but more often than not you run over some glass or through some bits, and there's going to be more than one object in the tyre and only one of them's gone through to puncture it. So just make sure you get all of those bits out. This is the most common type of puncture. Let's have a look at fixing this type of puncture. You're going to need a puncture repair kit and something to inflate the tyre with. The repair kits have pretty much got the same things in them. They should have some glue, some patches of varying sizes, some sandpaper, and they'll have these instructions as well. But obviously you won't need them once you've watched this video. The other thing they often have is a bit of chalk, and then on the back of the actual repair kit itself, there's just a rough area where you can rub the chalk against to put it over the patch after you've glued it on. Now I don't actually think the sandpaper that comes in repair kits is any good. It wears out too soon, and if it gets wet, then it's no good anyway. I've got this little, what I would call Parmesan cheese grater that I got out of a kit by a company called Mequix, and I always carry that round, and that roughs the tube up a little bit more, and that really helps the tube and the patch stick together. Always make sure that your glue's good, because once you've opened it, and then you maybe haven't used it for 6 months, you might find that you go to use it when you've got a puncture and it's actually dried out. I'd always have an extra tube of glue in my repair kit, and that way I know, because it hasn't been opened, that I've definitely got some sort of supply of it. The glue is the most important thing. If you've got glue, you can always make a patch out of a piece of an old inner tube if you do it properly. You can spend various amounts of money on buying a repair kit. As long as you buy the ones with the feathered edges, it doesn't really matter how much you pay, because that's really one of the main things that makes them stay on. So once I've found the hole, I get my thumb and I put it over the hole, and then I let the rest of the air out of the tube, and then I get my cheese grater, or sandpaper if you haven't got one of those, and I just rough up the tube, and I rough up an area that's bigger than the patch I'm going to put on it. Now at this point, a lot of people would mark the tube up by putting a circle or a little square around it, or some sort of crosshairs with a pen. The problem is I don't take a pen with me when I go out cycling, and I also don't take my glasses. So top tip here is, once the glue's on the tube, and it's pretty much dried out, if you just pump the tube back up again, because you do need to put a bit of air in it to make it the right shape to put the patch on, what you'll find is that you'll see the air coming out through the glue and it'll just go opaque, and that's where the hole is. Pump the tube up again and put your finger over the hole. Then you want to just put a little bit of glue over it, and that'll make the hole quite obvious because it'll show up in the glue. And then I get my glue and I just put a good amount on, again, more than you think you might need. And then I smear it all out so it's nice and thin. And then I let that dry for no more than about 2 minutes. And often I'll just blow on it until it goes opaque. And that's how I tell that it's actually ready to take the patch. And then I get my patch and I pull that off the foil. And sometimes it comes off the other way, so you end up with it stuck on the foil. But either way, you need to get the patch off the foil. And then I just push it down and press it hard with my fingers and sort of press it around the edges so the feathered bit sticks down properly. Now there's divided opinion on whether you should take the cellophane off once you've fitted the patch. I always take it off because I don't want another thing inside the tyre rubbing against the tube, which might make the patch come off. And once I've done that, I get my cheese grater again and my bit of chalk, and I just chalk it up and dust that over the patch and where the glue is. And if I'm at home, I'll probably just use, or in the workshop, I'll probably just use talcum powder just because it's easy. I'll just dust it over it. And now it's ready to go back into the bike. When you're actually putting the patch on the tube, it's important to have it the same sort of size as it would be inside the tyre. If you put it on when it's flat, what'll happen is when you pump it up to the right size, it'll start to stretch out and it'll often leave like a little divot in the tube, and that'll start to pull on the edges of the patch. And so the repair just might not last that long. If you do it with too much air in the tube, so it's bigger than what it would be inside the tyre, when it's back down to the right size for the tyre, you'll notice that it sits up on the tube and is actually kind of lumpy. And that, again, because it's not nice and smooth with the tube, you run the risk of that failing in the future. If you find that the edge of the patch is just lifting up a little bit, or it's actually curled up, which happens sometimes when you're trying to get it off the foil or take the actual plastic backing off it, a little trick that I learned many years ago is to just get a little bit of the solution that you glue it on with and just put it actually on top of the patch and then just feather it out. Sounds counterintuitive, but it does work. There are all sorts of things that people say you should do, like letting the glue dry for about 3 hours, setting light to the glue, rubbing the seam away with the sandpaper. But if it's done properly, you don't need to do all of these things. And I'm not saying they don't work. What I'm saying to you is that you can do them better or just as well and not have to worry about that sort of thing. Now, if the hole's on the inside of the tube, this could be a few things. The first one it can be, and it's quite obvious, is a snake bite. And you get that from when you hit something like a hole or a curb, and it compresses the tube so much that it actually gets pinched by the tyre and the rim. And it's quite obvious because it's two holes next to each other. And when I say holes, usually it's two slits. I don't really know why they call it a snake bite. It looks more like snake eyes to me. Now, sometimes you can't see when a hole's coming up, like you might be riding in a bunch or something like that, and you've got no option than to maybe try and bunny hop it. And sometimes it will just go wrong and you'll catch the rim, and that will give you that sort of puncture. Usually, this type of puncture isn't repairable. Now, if it's just a single hole on the inside, it's going to be something to do with the rim. So that might be just there's a rough bit inside the rim, but it's more often than not, what's happened is there's a problem with the rim tape. Like it's just got a little hole in it or something like that. It's worn through, or it might have moved and distorted over time. So you just want to go around and check the rim tape and just make sure that it's covering all the holes where the spokes are. Because it doesn't take very long for the tube to go down inside that, and then it'll get punctured either by the rim itself or by the spoke head. Next up is a massive gash in the tube. Now this is usually caused by the tube not being fitted properly and getting caught under the bead of the tyre. And then at some point, because it doesn't always happen straight away, the tube ends up lifting the tyre off the edge of the rim, and as it comes out, it explodes. And when I say it explodes, I mean it really does. It often sounds as loud as a gun. And so you often know that you've got that before you actually get the tube and inspect it. These gashes can range from about 2 centimetres up to 20 centimetres long. And this is why you should check your tyre as you're pumping it up, just to make sure that it's not blowing off. Because sometimes it happens just because the bead of the tyre hasn't hooked into the rim properly. Obviously you can see by this sort of hole, this is not repairable either. The next one is caused by damage to the sidewall of the tyre. Now this can happen for a couple of reasons. The tyre's just starting to get weak and perish from age in the sidewall. You can just catch it on something like a curb, and then at some point that becomes a hole in the side of the tyre. Often it's because brake pads haven't been fitted or readjusted as they wear on a rim brake, and the brake pad has just gone over the top of the rim and has been catching on the tyre. And you can't often see it because it's right by the bead and where that joins the rim. The giveaway sign for this is that the hole is in the side of the tube, but it also has a distinctive look. It looks a bit like a bullet hole in an old tin shack. Now, you'll have to use your own initiative to work out whether you think this type of puncture in the sidewall is repairable or not. Often, even if you can repair it to get yourself home, I wouldn't use this tube again long term. Just because of the positioning of the hole on the side, it's not likely that it's going to hold up for very long, even if you did a really good repair. It might just make the patch start to come off. If you feel like you're getting benefit from this video, please hit the like button down the bottom and share with any friends you think would benefit from it. Now, if you've got a hole that's pretty close to the valve, it's not really repairable. I mean, you might be able to repair it to get yourself home, but because it's so close to the valve, the tube moves, and also there's usually molding around there to support the valve. And if it's damaged there, there's very little chance that you'll be able to repair that successfully and it lasts very long. Also, if the valve's actually coming away from the tube, that's a non-starter completely. I wouldn't usually repair an inner tube while I'm out riding, unless I got really stuck. I always put a new tube in there, whether that be one that I've repaired earlier, you know, from a previous puncture, or a brand new one. I just want to get back on my bike when I've got a puncture, so I don't want to waste time repairing one. In my professional opinion, you can carry on using a tube that's had a patch put on it. I wouldn't race on a tube that's been patched, because when you're racing, you're just trying to eliminate all the things that could possibly go wrong. Let me know in the comments if you've had any aha moments and what they are. You may be riding tubeless, but tubeless isn't for everybody. At some point, even if you are riding tubeless, you probably will still have to use a tube, and then you may even have to fix it. And people often talk about using glueless patches, and I have used them, but not many times because I didn't find that they worked as well. There is no substitute for learning how to glue a patch on properly. Okay guys, thanks for getting this far. It's now time for me to give you my best tips on how to get home with a flat tyre while you're still riding your bike without wrecking the rim. So what do you do when you've had 7 punctures in a day and you've got no patches or tubes left, or you've wrecked your tyre and it doesn't really matter whether you've got patches and tubes because they're just going to stick out of the tyre when you put it back in? There's 2 ways you can get around this. One is to ride home in the big chain wheel out of the seat, so you're taking the weight off the back wheel. The problem with that is you'll get the tube bunching up quite quickly by the valve and it'll start to be really bumpy to ride. The furthest I've ridden with a flat back tyre out the seat in the big chain wheel is 25 miles, and it didn't wreck the rim at all. Because you've got your weight off the rim, and if you don't get it into any big holes, you'll be fine. Now, if it's the front tyre that's wrecked, what you want to do is swap them round, because it's much safer to ride with a flat back tyre than it is with a front flat tyre. Now, I once got stuck where they just mowed the grass on a golf course. So I just thought, well, let's stuff my tyre full of grass and see how far I can get. I actually got 6 miles, which is my official record. But when I was making this video, I wanted to see how far I could get. So I set myself a goal of 10 miles. So I did do 10 miles riding around with grass in my rear tyre. And I didn't have to ride out of the seat for that. I was pretty much in the seat the whole way, and the rim's fine. Now, I've seen a couple of jokey videos about putting grass in the tyre and riding home, but they were really doing it half-heartedly. If you're going to do it, what you want to do is get the freshest grass you can and stuff loads of it in there. And don't worry if there's bits in it which are like a little bit flat because you couldn't get enough in there. You'd only have to ride it for about half a mile or so, and it'll start to squelch around and even out. I'd love to hear your ideas about what could be stuffed in a tyre so that you can ride it home without wrecking the rim. And I'd also like to hear what's the furthest you've ridden on a flat tyre without wrecking the wheel. Drop it all in the comments below. I have got a really thorough video on how to change a tube properly. If you want to watch that, it'll be at the end of this video. Thanks heaps for watching, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do that now.